Okay, so should we just get started? 6:01.
Yes.
Yes, okay. Welcome to the February 2nd, 2021 meeting of the Community Relations Committee. We would like to thank Easthampton Media for recording tonight's meeting. All past meetings of the CRC can be found on our city website for viewing at any time. For the benefit of those of you who are joining us from the community, I would like to start this meeting by sharing our committee's mission statement. Our mission is to promote positive relations throughout Easthampton's diverse population. We will work to build a sense of inclusion, community, and pride, where community members feel welcome, accepted, and valued. And we'll begin tonight's meeting with a roll call. Rebecca Passa.
Here.
Patty Dougherty. Patty, you're muted. Here.
She's waiting.
Emily. Okay, Emily Britton. Oh, has Emily got issues again with voice sound, maybe? She's here. Okay. Margaret Kirstein. Margaret is not here with us yet. Okay. Mary Lou Splain.
Here, and I think Margaret last week said she didn't know whether she was going to make it. I recall her saying that, so.
Okay. All right. Jan Norman.
Here.
Myra Oyedemi.
Here.
Gabby Stevenson.
Here.
Deborah Lusnia, present. Okay, thank you very much. So we'll start off with approval of minutes. Rebecca so kindly sent us some minutes for the meeting. Let's start with January 19th, 2021. Do we have a motion to approve?
I actually have a couple grammatical corrections.
Okay.
Words missing.
Okay.
So I did read them. When it's under the approval, Rebecca, seconded, I think you want by in front of Myra's name.
Okay, so is this the minutes for
January 19th?
19th.
Okay. And, okay, seconded by. Paragraph 2, seconded by Myra, right?
Okay. And then under public speak,
Mm-hmm.
In the paragraph that Louise had, I think it's like 3/4 of the way down. Louise noted and found. I think you're missing the word found. That.
Sure. Okay. And maybe to be clearer, she found comments hard to hear.
Yes.
So maybe I should say and found the comments. Okay.
Yes.
Very hard to hear.
Felt like it needed a verb. And then I think the DOJ, isn't DOJ capitalized?
Well, I've seen it D with a small O and J. I don't really either.
I don't care. I just recall it seeing that. And then under the CRC outreach, it's the sentence that starts thus, and then some, and I think you need a verb in there.
Okay. Yeah, some
changes were made.
Right.
Okay. That's it.
Okay.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve with those changes noted?
I'll approve it.
Okay, is there a second with the changes requested?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Gabby. Okay, we have a motion. It's been seconded to approve the minutes from the January 19th, 2021 meeting. All those in favor? Rebecca?
Yes.
Patty?
Yes.
Emily?
Process, I'd like to know if it's better to abstain if I haven't read it really carefully yet, or to just say sure.
It's up to you.
I would love to know. I guess I'll abstain.
Okay. Mary Lou? Oh, you made the motion, but yes. Okay. Jan?
Yes.
Myra?
Abstain.
What did you say?
I said abstain. There wasn't enough time for me to review.
Okay. Gabby?
Yes.
Okay, and I also vote yes. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 yeses, 2 abstentions, So the motion passes. Okay, the next thing for approval is the minutes from the January 26th, 2021 meeting. Do we have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion to approve. It's been seconded at the January 26th, 2021 meeting. Rebecca,
Yes.
Patty,
Yes.
Emily,
Yes.
Mary Lou,
Yes.
Jan,
Yes.
Myra,
Abstain.
Gabby,
Yes.
and I also vote yes. Okay, so the motion passes. Thank you very much. Okay, for announcements, I had previously mentioned at our last meeting, but it wasn't really on the agenda, so I wanted to just state it again that unfortunately, Alyssa O'Leary has tendered her resignation from this committee. And I think I can speak for all of us when I say that we are sad to see her go. And we appreciate the contributions that she made to this committee during the past 2 years. And we just like to say thank you very much, Alyssa, for your time and your service. Okay, on to public speak, the public speak portion of our meeting. At this time, any member of the public is welcome to speak to the committee. If you'd like to speak, use the raise your hand feature by selecting the participants option at the bottom of your screen, then click raise hand at the bottom of the participants window. If you're dialing in by phone only, you can raise your hand by pressing *9. Please remain on mute until you're called, at which point you can unmute yourself. When it's your turn to speak, we will ask you to state your name and the address of your residence before addressing the committee. I would also like to remind everyone that members of the committee cannot respond to comments made during public speak, and we ask that you remain respectful and direct your comments only to the committee members. There will be a 3-minute time limit for those who wish to speak. Would anyone like to talk to the committee at this time? Okay. It doesn't look like, oh, I'm sorry. Jean Francis? Would you like to unmute and speak?
Yes, yes. Yes. Can you see me? Can you hear
I
me?
can see you. Yes, thank you. Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, I don't know. Well, first of all, my name's Jean Francis. I live in Precinct 2 in Easthampton. And my big question is, I know, first of all, I want to say I appreciate what you sent out last week about the coup at the Capitol. I think that was something you really, really needed to do as a community relations committee. But I'm curious to know what else is it that you do? Like if I come to you with a complaint as a community member, where does that go? And yeah, I know you can't respond to me, but I would really appreciate you getting back to me and letting me know. What is it that you do? If I come to you with a complaint for the police department or for the school department, what do you do? And what can you do with that complaint? So, I mean, I'm thinking as a community relations committee, you ought to be able to do something. So I really would appreciate hearing that. And also I'm just curious to know how you all work and what you're doing when you're not here on your meetings. So I think that's probably it. But I basically want to know what it is that you do and what can you do and what can the community count on you doing. And this is another big one. Are you community advocates? I mean, are you going to advocate for me as a community member, or are you going to turn it over to Nicole and say, oh, Nicole, whatever you think? So I'm curious to know how, or if you turn it over to Alberti and say, oh, well, Alberti, what do you think? So as a community member and talking to the Community Relations Board, I would hope that your position is to advocate for the community members. And that's it. Thank you. And I'll mute myself.
Thank you very much, Jean Francis. I'm taking notes. Okay, would anyone else have anything else they'd like to say at this time? Okay. I'd just like to say we will be addressing some of that information as this meeting proceeds. I just want to let you know that much. Okay.
Wait, Jane's hand is up. Is it still up? Is she, and do we need to just reiterate that we are not able to answer her questions right now because it was not on the agenda? That seems strange, but.
No, I heard you say that you would not respond to me. I'm fine with that, but I want to hear from one of you all, somebody, about what I have put out here.
Yeah. Okay.
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 I think I've made that clear.
Gabby.
Yeah, I mean, I think as a next step, we can add this to our agenda for next week so we can actually discuss it, right?
Yeah.
As a procedure.
Right. Mm-hmm. We can go over all that information. Yes. Yes, we will plan to do that. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for speaking, Jean Francis. Anyone else? Okay. I will assume then that everyone has spoken that would like to, and we'll move on to the next item on our agenda, close public speak, and move on to the next item on our agenda, which is the update on our meeting with Patty and I met with the Department of Justice Community Relations Service people or person who represents Massachusetts, the state of Massachusetts. And so we wanted to provide you with an update on that. Patty, do you want me to start off and then you can, fill in? Okay. So it was a very interesting meeting. We spoke with this one individual, Derek. Sometimes we're never sure if there's going to be others joining us or not because the setup of the meeting also involves multiple people. But it was basically Derek, Patty, and I. And he's the Massachusetts representative for the Department of Justice for Community Relations Committees. And so our primary question for him, and the thing we wanted to talk most importantly about, was the process that we should follow with regard to the community input form. And, there was some concerns about the mayor's outline of how she saw us functioning with regard to community input. And through our discussions as a committee, that some concerns about us being an investigative body, concerns about the amount of time we have to do that, what that could entail and how labor intensive that could be, all sorts of concerns about us functioning as an investigative body. So we wanted to seek clarification and input from the experts. And it was interesting. Basically, Derek explained to us that there are many community relations committees in the country that are investigative bodies. He said, but those cities have large budgets and they have full-time paid people that function in those capacities. For example, he gave us some links to the city of Chicago, and they have a complete budget of $500,000 to be an investigative committee. So clearly we're not that, and we're, not anywhere near that in terms of size or scope. So he said for a city more our size and for our situation, it would be much more appropriate for us to be a committee that relays information, provides feedback, kind of facilitates the communication process, shares information with the public. Basically, we would be not investigators, but we would be people that would collect and disseminate information, report feedback, and also to some extent hold departments accountable for getting that feedback. And then we would provide feedback to the community. So that was the gist of what he advised us on. And it seems to make a lot of sense given our resources and given our function here in Easthampton. With that in mind, I took a stab at kind of drafting a first like SOP for communication that I had hoped to send out in advance to share with you, which didn't happen in enough time. And so I just thought maybe I could just read through it, and then I'll also send it out to you after this meeting. And Patty, yes?
I just wanted to just clarify that it was a really very good conversation with Derek, and it felt very helpful to put some structure to what we haven't really been able to nail down. But I liked that word, advocate. So if we think of this, the example that Derek used, which I thought was great, was how many times does somebody complain or give feedback to a department and there's no response? And we can then, so folks can come to us and we can make sure there is a response. We can make sure there is action, but we don't have to be responsible for a full-fledged investigation. So we can advocate for the community, but we don't have to, we have to figure out a way, and this is going to be a next step of who helps us investigate, because we can't, I just don't see us in that role. And from Derek, he, in his expertise was that without paid staff, that's probably not something that's realistic. Anyway, I just wanted to
Yeah, that's great. Good point. Okay, so I just wanted to, I just took a real quick stab at this to just put forth some thoughts on a process, and I just wanted to read this if I could, and then I'm going to send it out to you folks for comments. And I mean, we'll have comments and discussion at our next meeting, but so that you can read this and just have a hard copy, but for comments and discussion at our next meeting, and then also to share it with the mayor and get her feedback on this. But this is what I listed for a process when we receive community input forms. Assign each incident report to a CRC member. The CRC member would follow up the person who submitted the report to contain complete information and explain the CRC process. The CRC member would note any barriers that might exist to fair, equitable, and transparent treatment. CRC member would share the report and observations with the appropriate department head or the mayor and establish a timeline for feedback. The CRC member would follow up with the department head as needed to be able to relay findings and conclusions to the person who submitted the report in a timely manner. And any conclusions and suggestions for change are shared with appropriate department heads or the mayor. And then information is shared with the full CRC committee and the public as appropriate. So that was kind of what I just listed as a summary based on what we were working with before. But does that give you an idea of what we're thinking about based on this conversation with Derek? Does that, any comments from anyone, suggestions, thoughts?
Quite frankly, let me just be honest and not tactful. I feel really uncomfortable. I feel like I'm receiving information secondhand, and maybe I would like to have this conversation with Derek as well to give insight. I just feel uncomfortable about the process. I don't have the information that you have to share. I think it was only a few weeks ago that the committee received its first complaint. I know there's limitations and scopes, but it just feels kind of like I'm a bystander and not an equitable member of this committee. And that it is, yeah, I feel uncomfortable.
So you're feeling that way because you're feeling like you're not getting this information firsthand from Derek? Is that it?
I feel we created a process. We said that we would reach out. As part of that process, we would reach out to people that had expertise, but by reaching out, it's like we're getting that information, but there's not like a summary of that information. I can't confirm with Derek. So I imagine this being more of a collaborative effort than hearing something back and then the chairs deciding what we're going to do. That's just my thoughts. It doesn't mean that I would arrive at a different conclusion. I just feel uncomfortable about it.
Okay, I'm just trying to understand where the uncomfortableness comes in. But anyway, so basically, he was just suggesting to us, basically, maybe I'm not explaining it very well, but basically saying that a lot of CRCs from large cities in the country do have an investigative role, but they're usually all situations where there's paid staff members. And so basically, he was suggesting to us that for a city of our size, and knowing what he knows of Easthampton, that our committee should take on a role that's more focused on providing information, relaying information, following up on information, being an advocate. I think that's a good word for the community in holding departments accountable, but that we're not actually doing investigative work ourselves. And he also explained that so I'm just looking at my notes. Some cities, he said, have 2 full-time staff members that do investigations. And he said it's time consuming. There's a lot of legal issues. There's unions involved and often in a lot of confidentiality. And it's a big job and people are usually paid to do it. So he was basically just suggesting that we don't take on the role of trying to investigate things ourselves because it's such a big job and it's very complicated, and that we take on a role of relaying information, following up. He said and as Patty said, a big concern is usually that people will submit complaints and then hear nothing. And that's one of the most frustrating things for anybody, and producing a lot of negative feelings about a city or how it's run is not hearing back. And that, we would obviously be ensuring that people got answers, that we got responses, and that we're sharing it with the community as it would be helpful, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, Patty, would you agree that that was like the scope of the conversation?
Yeah, I don't, yeah, I don't have anything to add to that. I'm concerned that there seems to be, I'm not sure what, Gabby has her hand up. I'm concerned that perhaps there's a sense that we're not being forthcoming. And I think we're being very forthcoming about the conversation we had. And there's nothing to add to what Deb has reported. So I'm going to let Gabby go ahead.
Gabby?
Yeah, I just kind of want to add what Myra was saying, and I'm kind of in the same boat. And it's also because it feels like we should have had some sort of material. If we don't have the opportunity to meet with Eric or with Derek, it seems weird that we don't have any materials prior to this meeting. So it's hard for me to synthesize completely what you're saying, or to because I don't have the time to process it and to really dig into what the points you're making. And also, I think also to Myra's point, it seems like a lot of decisions are just kind of made ad hoc without group discussion. And I think this can go back to for example, when one of you all requested the IA report, that was done without in confirmation with the rest of the group. And I'm not sure why it wasn't maybe Deb and Rebecca who met with Derek, or why wasn't there a discussion of who would be the individuals most appropriate to meet with Derek? So it just seems like there are ways to make this process of how we interact with each other more equitable. And I think, so I don't want to, speak for Myra, but that's kind of where I'm coming from. It just seems like decisions are made without consulting the rest of the CRC. And I think we saw this same discussion when we had questions about how, for example, the agenda is made. And we had to ask for opportunities to add to the agenda. So I think I think when Myra said she's uncomfortable, I think that's an opportunity for us to step back and look at, okay, what about this process could make someone uncomfortable? Or what about this process isn't equitable?
Can I
Patty?
So just a couple things. I think just to respond to the first thing you said, Gabby, I think what Deb wants to do is, we only met with Derek on Friday, or I forget when we met him. But anyway, we do want to send this all out to you all. I think Deb was just trying to start the conversation, and that she wants to put together that piece of information, and we can send the links that Derek shared with us, and we will do that. In our December meeting, I believe we all agreed that Deb and I would talk with, it was a discussion, and I said I would follow up with the DOJ Community Relations Service and find out how other CRCs do this type of work, what kind of, if any, templates there are to this process. So we did discuss that, and we did say that I would do it. And in that we were speaking with the DOJ, it made sense for Deb to be in that conversation. So I do want to say we did have this conversation about who would talk to DOJ. And in terms of, well, there's a lot there to unpack. So I'm not sure, and I want to address these things. I'm not sure I understood about the internal affairs report. That was simply asking the mayor to bring the report of an incident that we were asked to follow up with. And then as far as agenda building goes, I think that's something we can talk more about, and we're happy to talk about that. And part of agenda building has to be what our goals are. And we set those goals last year, which were community outreach, building the incident report and community input form and process, and holding a public forum. Those were our three main, what do you want to call it, goals for the next 2 years, or whatever, however long it was going to take us to get there. So when we're building agendas, we want to make sure that so we don't get off track on a million other things, because there's 1,000 directions that this committee can go into. Those were the things that were agreed upon by this committee when we built our mission statement, when we built our vision statement. Those were the things that came out of those conversations. So in terms of agenda building, it doesn't mean that people can't add things to the agenda, but it is up to the chairs of the committee to make sure that things that are added to the agenda are supporting those goals that we set as a committee. And then if we want to add bigger items, again, that's something we have to think, well, if we start going down that road, are we ever going to get to the forum? So we have to manage what this committee can do. And it's not to say that anybody can't submit something to be on the agenda. So I hope that makes sense. I want to say that, you know, even though this committee has been together for 2 years, there's been a lot that's happened, and there's been, you know, there was a lot of false starts, and we're still trying to sort through things. But I feel strongly that we had a good handle on those 3 things that we wanted to do, and I want us to be careful to not go down too many other paths.
Myra?
I think Emily had her hand up first, but I'll go ahead and take it. I would then sorry, Emily. Love you lots. So I think then this speaks to another thing that needs to happen. Since there's been turnover and seats and people joining, then I think it would be great to have an onboarding process so that your new members and even old are refreshed on what your goals are, what your objectives are. Because when I joined, I was hoping to get some sort of informational, some sort of shared drive that would speak about what have the group's successes been, where are you headed, and it seems as though I could literally be someone sitting in public speak. At the moment, with the exception of the binder that was given to me by the mayor. So I just say that I actually don't know what your 3 goals are. There was no onboarding process, so perhaps that could be eliminated in the future as more people join and people rotate.
Emily?
I wanted to say that I think what I saw happen was that you just reported on your interaction with Derek, and you know, Derek said that larger city. I don't know. I'm hearing someone else's voice. It's a little distracting, so forgive me. Small city unpaid CRCs don't do investigations, but they do this instead. They, you know, relay information, they provide feedback, all that. And then I heard you say, so this is what we're going to do. We're not going to do the investigation. So in a way, Patty and Deb just made a decision on that alone. Not that I disagree necessarily, but anyway. So then Deb went ahead and started listing out what we would be doing. Right. And I don't know, you know, when I listened to that list of what we would be doing, in a way that almost sounded like doing an investigation. And it did sound like a lot of work in a way. So that was what I wanted to say. And also, I do remember we went over the whole incident report, but we did not discuss then the process of what we would do with that incident report. So is that overlapping with exactly what Deb just said? And then maybe we do need to go back and remind ourselves of that incident report, and especially Myra and Gabby being new members. And so, yeah, yeah.
Sorry, so we never completed what we were going to do with the incident report. We were going to talk to DOJ and get examples of what other CRCs were going to do, and that was before we decided on what that procedure was going to be. And I'm sorry, maybe what Deb said, you know, the words came out, whatever, but my intention was that Deb was going to send that hard copy of the process and we would all be able to discuss it at the next meeting, but that we didn't want, I personally feel like it's very hard to discuss anything if the copy is not submitted at least 48 hours before our meeting, so everybody has a chance to read it and isn't stuck trying to like just think it through. So I think Deb was just giving you an idea of what she was going to send out, and that we hoped we would talk about it at the next meeting.
I'd just like to add, I apologize. I think I owe you all an apology in here somewhere, but I wanted to just share with you that when we went into this conversation with Derek, I had thought I had heard from all of you from our conversation previously when we talked about this incident report and what our role exactly was to be in the process of handling these things. There was great concern by members of the committee about us taking on an investigative role. That's what I recall being the issue, is that people were very concerned about the time commitment and what that would entail for us in terms of a workload to take on that kind of a role of being an investigative body. So when we were speaking with Derek, and Derek was saying, you know, people who do that, committees that do that have paid professionals that do that full time. And I don't think that that's appropriate for a city your size, for you folks to be taking on as a volunteer committee, that kind of role. I just felt like relieved. I felt like, oh, thank goodness. Well, great, because this was a grave concern, I thought, of our group, that this was a lot and this was intense. And so for him to frame it in a more appropriate role for a volunteer committee of your size would be to do, you know, to collect and disseminate the information and report the feedback and hold departments accountable for follow-up and, you know, give public feedback, blah, 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 blah. I just felt this like, oh, hallelujah. Isn't this great to hear? This is good news. So that's how I was presenting it to you. Like, okay, great news. This is a relief. So I apologize if I presented the information with that particular piece of framework. Like, that was my perspective, is from our previous conversations. They were great concerns. We were looking for some advice and guidance and help because of those concerns. And then I just felt so relieved when he shared that information. And so I was basically feeling like, great news. This is exciting because this seems so much more manageable. And I think we could be very effective. We could definitely have a lot to offer here, and felt kind of excited to share it with you, share it all with you. So that's where I was coming from. I certainly did not mean to be deciding anything for anyone or be jumping ahead where I shouldn't be. I apologize if that's the way this is perceived. It's certainly not my intention. We can take a step back. We do not need to just embrace what he recommended. I mean, we can go back and discuss that as much as you'd like. But so I just want to share with you, that was my perspective. I thought we were, as a group, were concerned, thought this sounded like it made a lot of sense, and was excited to report it to you. And then I just was trying to, in the interest of time, take a stab at looking at what originally Margaret had outlined for us, a process for us, and kind of looked at that process and tried to say, okay, with a new set of eyes, a new framework of collecting and disseminating information, advocating for the community, what that might look like, and then wanting to send that out to you folks to digest, think about, and for us to discuss at our next meeting. So anyway, just clarification from my point, from my where I was coming from on all of this. Any other comments, suggestions, reactions to any of that, Myra?
Yeah, I don't want to belabor the point. Thank you for clarification. Thank you for taking time to meet with Derek. And I do remember the conversation and avidly being involved in that conversation about what steps might look like. And I feel like my recollection is that we were going to reach out for best practices, and we were going to reach out to see if our form that was created was similar or needed more information. That the form that was designed before we got here, to see if that was sufficient, if there should be things added in comparison to other forms that exist, to really look at best practices and procedures, such as what you were going to find or seek from Derek. So that was my understanding of how we were proceeding, was to look forward to have a conversation about best practices.
Patty?
Yes, and Derek sent us links to that, and I haven't had an opportunity to review them, and those are also going to be forwarded to the committee.
Any other comments, thoughts?
I guess I want to say we are going to need to spend a lot of time hashing out our process and response, because a line like hold departments accountable like could have 100 steps in it or 100 different perspectives on how we do it. And
right.
That is something that the whole committee is going to have to take part in, and not just one CRC member. So I think we're going to need to really spend a lot of time with that process. And I would love to see best practices, like how do you hold a city committee responsible or department responsible? I have no idea. I come from a very different system.
I think to some extent
I'm sorry. Does anybody have, like, what's going on in the background here?
it might
Coming from Deb.
Thank you.
I think I fixed it. Sorry. Sorry. Anyway, okay. Well, what I'd like to propose is that going forward that we submit all the information to all of you that we discussed, like the links from Derek, his communication, and for you to look at the city of Chicago and the city of, was it Dubuque? I don't remember, Patty, do you?
Yes.
Anyway, I'll also send this draft, just notes that I've put together just as a starting point for discussion and conversation. I'll send that along to you for your thoughts. I also feel like whatever we decide, we need to send it to the mayor too for her input and comments before we vote on anything. We need to get her approval as well. So we need to dial her into that process. Patty, you want to say something?
Patty's muted.
Thank you. Gabby and Myra, I'm happy to have a meeting with both of you, one of you, whatever, and go through, sort of all the things that happened before you were on the committee. I'm happy to do that. And if that would be helpful, we can totally set that up. And if it's just three of us, then we're not a quorum. And I do think that, that's something that probably we should definitely consider, when new people come on, to make sure everybody's on the same page. So if that's something that would be helpful, I'm happy to do it.
That would be very helpful. I just need to ask a clarifying question, because I think when I sat in this meeting as a participant, it was made very clear that this group is not under the purview of the mayor. So why in our pre-steps are we confirming with her before we make decisions?
I think because if we're going to need cooperation from the mayor's office to be able to advocate. And the mayor is also in conversations with the Department of Justice on these things as well. So I think it's just a point of having everybody on the same page.
And when she shared with us her view of what she thought our role should be in these situations. She had laid out a plan for us to be much more of an investigative body. And that's kind of where we went down that path. And that's when committee members were all saying, well, wait a minute, this looks like it would be a full-time job. This looks overwhelming. This looks like this would be an awful lot, which then brought us to the point of seeking some outside expertise from the Department of Justice on this and getting their perspective. So that's kind of how this all came. So I would, because she was the one who was suggesting in the first place what our role should be, I just felt like it would make sense. And, we're dealing with her department heads, that it would make sense to kind of renegotiate that or discuss again whatever it is we'd like to pursue for our role, and see if we could agree on what that should be. I guess there's nothing that says we have to do that. Margaret?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Myra. I really think that we are not under the mayor's purview. And of course, you cannot, if we're going to try to do a systemic kind of approach, you can't leave out the mayor, you can't leave out this department, that department. But in terms of getting her approval, I don't think that we have to get her approval. I don't want to be in an antagonistic, I'm not suggesting that we be in an antagonistic relationship with the mayor, but that this is very clear. Our mission, how we do our work is our decision, not hers. That's my understanding very clearly. From before, Deb, you were part of the committee. So from the very beginning. What about other people who have been here from the beginning? My thing is that it's our decisions, not the mayor's. And so, Jan, what do you remember? Mary Lou, what do you, Emily, what do you remember? Rebecca? That's what I remember.
I remember that we got approved by the city council with some language. So it might be we want to look at what that says and propose changes. But it never said that we were an investigative. It was so vague as to be non-existent. So, and so I know that I don't exactly remember my exact words or anything, but when we discussed whether we were going to be an investigative body, I have been an investigator for 35 years. It is an enormous amount of work. And we're talking about small situations. I got paid a lot of money to do that work on child abuse cases, custody cases, child placement cases, etc. Investigating, talking to, 30 hours easy. So to do a thorough investigation, then write up a report, 80 hours. So I probably was the one going, no investigations, and the legal and the confidentiality, and who the hell are you, Margaret, to be looking into somebody's private life? I was appointed by the court. I was not just a private citizen, So in any case, I think we really do need to clarify who we need to get permission from. We don't need to get permission from anybody except ourselves.
That's probably a very poor choice of words on my part. And I guess I was envisioning us working collaboratively with her on this, and thinking that it would be not a difficult thing to come to agreement on exactly what our process should be and our role should be in this situation. So if approval was a bad choice of words, forgive me. So I'm just thinking that it would make sense to have conversations with her, collaborate with her, get input from her. I think that that's just a healthy process. And I don't think I didn't mean to imply that she needs to approve what we do. I didn't mean to imply that. I was just looking to work together to come up with, in the end, what we determine is the best path going forward. So, I mean, if there was, drastic disagreement, we could take it from there. But I'm thinking a collaborative approach would make sense along the way. Emily?
So I have nothing against collaboration, but I do recall the mayor saying several times in those first meetings that we had in that big room that overlooked the pond, that it was going to be up to us, that we were going to be working on our own processes and figuring out how to work. And I don't remember her saying that she needed to approve anything. So I would recommend we come up with our process ourselves first, which I can imagine it's going to take a while based on some of these big tasks that are listed and that Margaret, has identified can take a long time. And then there's a little bit of overlap with investigation. There really is. So I would recommend we work on it all on our own first without reviewing, showing it to the mayor. And again, I think we do need to clarify that we may not need her approval. She didn't say that in the first few.
We don't need her approval. We don't need her approval. W is the wrong word. We don't need her approval.
Okay.
We do need to understand that if we're going to somehow be working, looking into a city department, that we are going to have to work collaboratively somehow with somebody in the city. But she does not have to approve it, period.
So we have to understand the politics.
I'm sorry, Jan. Could you say that again?
I said, so, but Patty was stating we have to understand the politics here to a degree as well.
Well, but also I don't necessarily mean it. I agree with that, but more so that we're gonna need some cooperation. We don't have
assistance.
We're going to need cooperation with somebody in the city if we're going to be advocating, or going and looking into a city department. It doesn't mean that what we say we want to do needs the mayor's approval, but it would be good to be able to work with the city on this and not be this completely I don't even know how we would do it without a little support from the city. But.
So I just want to first say that my recollection and what I was told when I joined the CRC was similar to what Myra, Margaret, and Emily just explained, that we're not under the purview of the mayor. And I think it's important for us to point out that the importance of that, of us being a completely separate entity from other parts of city government, is that we might get a complaint about the mayor. So there might be a point where we have the complaint about the mayor. So we also have to think about what the perception is from the community. If this is just seen as the mayor's community relations committee, then folks might not feel comfortable coming to us with issues that they may be having with her office. So I think, and I'm not saying that that's going to happen, but we have to be open to that possibility. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's important to keep that separation. And I think that's why, because that keeps the integrity of this group itself and the work that we do.
Mm-hmm.
Good point.
Mm-hmm. And just as a side note, I would anticipate that she's always been so supportive and helpful and very supportive of us functioning very independently. And I think she would be nothing but supportive all along the way throughout this process. Margaret?
I agree with you, but it's kind of irrelevant in a way. I feel like, let's say we get an issue. That somebody doesn't feel like the school system is taking their child's peanut allergy serious enough. Well, I don't have to necessarily go to the head of, I'm going to find out who they already spoke to. Anybody who's going to give us any information has already done something. They had an interaction with so-and-so and they're not happy about it, right? Mm-hmm. Whatever that is. Mm-hmm. And so we don't, then we call so-and-so. and we say, we got this issue, complaint, and, are you the right person for us to speak to? Or do we, is there somebody, you and somebody? And that's part of our role, to figure out how to solve or facilitate some kind of communication so that the peanut allergy issue gets more attention versus, oh, gee, too bad, have your kid have their EpiPen, So I feel like we are going to be working with the various parts of the city government, but on a case-by-case basis. And I don't think we have to take into account any particular person in city government at this point. That they're all, whether they're select people or who's in charge, the school committee, or it doesn't really matter who. But if somebody's going to contact us, they will have already started some ball rolling.
Right. Can I just make a quick comment? Thank you so much. I want to agree with what Margaret has said, as well as Emily and maybe others. And I feel like before we get to the process of communicating with someone else, I really want us to have as a committee, to have more collaboration and more think time before we start extending it to someone else. So before we invite someone into the process, let's solidify what we're going to do. Let's solidify our steps. Let's build better communication and relations amongst ourselves in terms of our processes. So as much as we may, or has been in the past, there's maybe a weekly meeting, let's start having those conversations amongst each other so we can be on the same page.
Okay, so Patty.
Sorry, I just feel like this has become a little bit my role. I just want to point out that it's almost 7 o'clock, and I'm not trying to cut anybody off. I just think it's important that we track our time and look at the rest of the agenda and see and just prioritize so that we can make sure we get to everything we want to get to tonight. So do we want, does anybody have anything briefly to add regarding either the mayor, the comment about the mayor, or this process, or are we good with Deb sending information out and continuing this conversation in our next meeting? Because there was a lot of things that were said that were really great here, and I don't want to lose them. But I think we want to have all that other information that from DOJ and stuff in front of us as we continue. So I'll just put it out there.
Rebecca?
Overall, I just wanted to take responsibility for and mention my memory that I was to reach out to the committee Mondays before the due date for agendas. And I haven't done that. The meetings were kind of back to back, and I've just had trouble time-wise doing that, so I wanted to apologize. But my memory from the past was that I agreed to put it on my calendar just to flag, okay, the agenda's due next Thursday. And that way people could consider whether there was something to propose. But I think it's also clear that we submit that all to co-chairs, and you've already talked about process. But I just wanted to apologize for still not having noticed people when the agenda was due. But going forward, I think, we've had some back-to-back meetings. Going forward, it should be easier for me. Thank you.
Not to digress too much, but I just wanted to say, I was going to suggest with regard to the agendas, I was going to just send out some additional information for just clarification, FYI purposes for the committee around that whole topic of the agenda. And I was going to suggest, like, if anybody had something they wanted to submit for consideration, like a week's notice would be good to give time for review, consideration, and getting it finalized to be posted to meet the 48 hours.
So I should remind a week in advance then.
Yeah, I think that'd be a good idea. Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your comments, your thoughts. Thank you. And I apologize for not doing a very good job in terms of communicating information. So we'll send all of that out that we discussed. I just wanted to say before we leave this topic, one other thing we did talk about with Derek was advice with regard to confidential reporting or people who want to be anonymous, all of that. We asked questions about that for advice, guidance, and he explained how all of the many issues that can be involved regarding those areas. And the conclusion was that we should seek advice from our city attorney on that, and that he would be the best person, or she, to advise. I believe it's a male, I'm not sure. He or she would be the best person to advise us on that matter, because it's very complicated. So that made a lot of sense to me, because I know that serving on the school committee, we were advised by our school department attorney on that with very clear guidelines. So that made a lot of sense to me. So if that makes sense to all of you, Patty and I thought we would pursue that with the city attorney and get that person's input on that matter. Would everybody be agreeable to that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Okay.
All right. So we will pursue that. The other thing was that he suggested that it's also nice to report out to the community on an annual basis, whatever, like a summary of incidents, be them positive or negative, both, at the end of a year. And so we shared that we've been putting everything on our webpage, and he thought that was a great idea. Just put all that information out there on the webpage. So I think that sums up that discussion. Would you agree, Patty? Did I forget anything? Does that cover it?
That's good. I think we should.
Okay, moving on. Okay, moving on to the next item on the agenda is the forum subcommittee update. Who would like to report out on where we stand with our forum?
Need to review the proposal, right? Or approve the proposal before we do anything else. So we have not met since the last.
Since then. Okay, so that's where we're standing now, awaiting official approval to proceed on the proposal that was submitted.
Right.
Okay, did everyone have a chance to read it, digest it, have any questions at this point? Comments?
Okay, I guess the only comment I have is that I thought the proposal was really good, and I really appreciate the work that was done and the revisions that were made. And I guess, I mean, I would say right now I would make a motion to approve the proposal. And then if somebody wants to second it, we could have more discussion before approving it. I would say one thing that we probably want to think about tonight is putting figuring out our Deb has we do have some information about the budget, and having a discussion about when we want the forum to happen. In my experience, if we start getting too late into like the warm weather months, like June, July, and August, people are pretty checked out. And I imagine they're going to be really checked out this year because everybody's going to go off in a million different directions. So I guess first I would say I would motion to accept the proposal as is, with knowing that we have to add in information like when it's going to be and things like that. But the basic premise of it and what we're trying to address and cover with the forum, I would motion to accept that.
I do just have one question. I wonder, like,
But Emily, before we proceed, if we could get if there's a second for that motion, and then we'll have discussion, just for a matter of process and procedure. Margaret, you're seconding the motion?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so now we'll open the floor for discussion. Emily?
so I'm just wondering, so maybe you've got great news about the budget, but if the budget were like really, really small, maybe we couldn't even carry forth with what the proposal suggests. So I don't
The mayor, we just followed up before the meeting to see if we had any information. We reached out to ask if there was any hard information on what exactly it would be for us for the first half of 2021. And she got back via email and said that we could have $5,000 to use between now and June 2021, June 30th, 2021. So we have that budget to work with.
Okay. I'm assuming that would cover what we want to do with the proposal. I don't know. I'm not a forum organizer myself, but
Well, I think based on the research, Emily, that you and I and Abby had done early on, I would think that would be sufficient with 2 facilitators and the other expenses. So I think that's a generous budget and more than enough for at least one forum.
Any other comments about the proposal?
how do we go about deciding, so that is a pretty large amount of money. How do we go about deciding how much money should go into this forum versus follow-up activities,
Well, maybe we could proceed with to execute this, see what the costs will be, and then take it from there. Just proceed on this plan and see what will be required for funding.
Well, my understanding is that once the fiscal year is ended, that any money left over goes back into the general fund. Is that true? And that starting July 1 with FY22,
A new budget.
So I'm not sure whether there's even the possibility of getting 2 gathering forums done by June 30th anyway. I don't, logistically and the amount of time that it's going to take and just getting speakers and getting dates that will work for them. I'm not sure that realistically 2 could actually be organized and executed in a timely manner by the end of June. That's just my thoughts, having organized things before.
So no other comments about the forum proposal as outlined, presented to us? Okay, are we ready to vote on that proceeding? Okay, we have a motion. It's been seconded to approve the proposal as outlined for us. I don't have the date. Anyway, is there a roll call vote? Let's see. Rebecca.
Approve.
Patty Dougherty.
Approve.
Emily Britton.
approve.
Margaret Kirstein.
Approve.
Mary Lou Splain.
Approve.
John Norman.
Approved.
Myra Oyedemi.
Approve.
Gabby Stevenson.
Approve.
Deborah Lusnia, approve. Okay, unanimous. Great news. So we can move on for the planning process for the forum. It'd be great. We know how much money we have to work with. Margaret?
And so is the next step for the planning subcommittee to come up with a budget and potentially facilitators, or I'm just curious.
I would think we probably need to act on facilitators pretty quick, because I think people get booked up pretty early. And as Patty said, we would probably be wise if we had this happen before the warm weather kicks into full gear and people aren't focused any longer.
I think in the proposal, the next step is to look out for presenters or organizations that match that criteria that was set out, and you can feel free to email any thoughts and ideas or contacts that people in this whole group may see as potential good fits that meet that criteria. And then we'll begin the process of reaching out to them and doing their cost and report back.
Is there any thought to going back to the group that
Paula Green.
Thank you. Well, but who was the other woman? Patricia?
Pat, she lives in Amherst. Pat, her name will come to me in a moment. I'll get it.
I'm just curious if there's any thought to going back to considering them, or do you want to really open it up to just new thoughts?
I would say feel free to submit the names and contacts that people within this whole group have to the subcommittee, which is John, Emily, and myself, and then we'll kind of overlook and see if they meet that criteria that you just agreed to.
Okay.
So are we gonna, how long do you think it's gonna take to come up with a short list to present to the committee, or how do we want to do this? Are we just gonna, and I'm just asking because we haven't done this before, so are we empowering, and I'm okay with it, the subcommittee to choose a facilitator or a group to facilitate, and just working from their recommendation and trusting they've done the due diligence, and then just sort of approving those folks? Or are we asking the subcommittee to bring us a short list of people? Personally, I would like to trust that when we've asked folks to go out and do the work, that barring something really bizarre that maybe they didn't know about this person, that I would trust their judgment. And I think if we as a group are going to move forward on things, we're going to have to operate that way in order to move forward on our goals. So that's my opinion.
I agree. I think the people should be empowered to make a recommendation to us, and not have us weigh in on all the options.
I was going to say that the woman's name is Pat Romney, and I will send that to, and so Paula Green and Pat Romney, I think have worked together before, but I can put that out to be reconsidered. I know Mary Lou, I'm not sure exactly. I guess Emily had worked on that with Paula before, correct?
And Abby.
And Abby, that's right. Okay, so Pat Romney was the second facilitator that was mentioned. And so We may be going back to square one again, but now there's money. So,
Well, there's also the group that Paula, and I don't know if Pat's involved in it, is the Bridge for Unity group,
right.
which I know my former employer, they were using them for diversity training for board and staff. They were starting that, so.
And that is another, Pat Romney isn't part of that group, but that would be a group to reach out to, and Paula is part of that group.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, the issue before, which I'll just restate, was that, you know, I thought Paula would be an interesting person as a woman in her 80s, a white woman in her 80s, but Pat Romney is a black woman. But again, she's probably in her 70s. And then there's the whole Bridge for Unity group of people.
Mm-hmm. And then in the paper today, there was the town of Amherst, I think, is having, or their city council is having a weekend-long diversity training with another group that I can try to find in the Gazette and send you that name if you guys are interested.
And I think also some of the people that facilitated that happening are part of Bridge for Unity. Amherst residents who are part of Bridge for Unity. So.
Anyone else?
Of course, I'm biased because I'm on the subcommittee, you know, if that sure, we can go ahead and decide who it would be, and, you know, but like Patty said, like, what if there's some odd thing that, you know, someone had a bad experience or whatever? I don't know. I'm also supportive of the committee hearing the suggestions, you know, and then, you know, listening to Myra and Jan and my recommendation and saying, yes, go for it, you know, like.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Oh, yeah, we would still need to, we would all approve. And as we all approve, we would all be, you know, responsible for the choice. But I think if you all, you know, get some references and feel really confident and comfortable with a choice, or maybe you all can't decide and you want to bring two people, that's fine too. I want to support you in whatever you need to do this. So if you find two people and they're amazing and they get great references and you feel really strongly about it, and you can just come to our committee and say, you know, we think this is the one, then I would like to support that. If you find, you know, you have two choices and you want us to help you with that decision, I would be fine with that too. So just whatever you need from us to, you know, make it happen.
And it might be helpful with like website links or something sent ahead of time. So again, it's not in the dark. I think any information on any issue, if you can send information out in a timely manner so that people can review it and read it. I know I need the visual cue, not just verbal.
Right. So this is what I would like to propose, is that the subcommittee give some, like, a report out of our progress to you on an ongoing basis and let you know where we are on the timeline. I think the proposal has some to be determined. So as we go through that, we can work on filling it in as well as giving updates as where we are. And then we'll see. I really don't want to get into like needing to vote and re-vote on every item of our work that we're going to do, because I think that is just going to protract the situation. But I would like to give frequent updates of this is where we are. We've called X number of people. Financials are this or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I do think the committee should all vote to approve the facilitators, though. I don't want to vote on every little thing, but I think it just would be a good vote of confidence in who we're putting up there, that the whole committee, supports that, or if somebody's uncomfortable with it, at least it's on the record that they are. But yeah, not like every little thing.
Does that sound good? Okay. Okay, so then you folks will move forward with filling in those blanks and coming up with a facilitator. Awesome. And a date. Awesome. Great. And we'll look forward to hearing more about that at our next meeting. Perfect. Okay, before we leave this topic, any last comments, thoughts, anything? All right, moving on. Next is on the agenda, CRC outreach, status of our websites, Facebook page, etc. So certainly this kind of speaks a little bit to Jean Francis's comments, but we certainly hope that our webpage would be a good source of information for who we are and what we're doing. Also keeping people informed of things via Facebook. Our webpage is mostly updated at this point, even though I've been cautioned by the mayor's office that updates are going to happen very slowly, and a lot is not going to take place until the website completely changes to something new this summer. They have managed to squeak in some updates for me. So there's still a little bit more that needs to be finished with regard to that and our previous requests, but we're in pretty good shape at this point. Facebook. Alyssa was our lead person on Facebook before she left us. We also had Gabby working with her and Rebecca. How do you feel about that? Do the two of you want to take the lead on the Facebook page, or how do you feel about that?
Yeah, that's fine. I think Rebecca and I can handle it.
I think Gabby made a very nice post about the statement that was against the insurrection on the 6th of January. That looked very nice. Thank you. Because I'm kind of like the first one that knows about an approved posted agenda. So the last two meetings I noticed on Facebook, and I made them into Facebook events. Those are a little different than what Alyssa did. So if people want to go ahead and look at the Facebook page and give me feedback, does that look good? Is there, but so we've done a little bit with it, just posting those, our committee meetings, and the fact, I also, Gabby, I put it as a pinned post, what you added, so that it would stay at the top of the page, because I think that that's important and really liked what you did. So that's what we have for now. I think Alyssa had anticipated that when we had more about the forum, that we'll get to a place where we'll begin to announce that there.
Okay, that's good. One of the other things about the forum that I'd love to, this is digressing a little bit, but that I would love for people to be thinking about is how we identify the people that are going to be participating and how we reach them to encourage them to participate. I think that's going to be really, really key to the success of this event, is that we reach out to the diverse audience, the participants that we envision for that event. So if we could really be giving thought to how do we identify who those people will be and reach out to them and encourage them to participate. Just want to put that out there. It's going to be key and take quite a bit of lead time. Okay. Well, thank you, Gabby. Thank you, Rebecca, for your willingness to continue taking the lead on the Facebook page. Appreciate that and the work you've done. Okay, next up is our next meeting date. In 2 weeks on a Tuesday, I have a conflict that day. I don't know how you feel, how you guys feel about this in terms of how soon we need to meet again, whether the subcommittee obviously will be meeting, I'm sure, numerous times between now and our next meeting. I don't know how much time you feel that you need to do your work. Any comments, suggestions about our next meeting date?
I'm fine with continuing with some continuity of being the first Tuesday of the month.
So just move to March go with March. I'm trying to call up the calendar here.
March 2nd.
March 2nd. Does that work for everyone?
Yeah.
Okay, so our assumption will be that the forum subcommittee will be meeting frequently, regularly, and making great progress between now and then. And that'll also give everyone time to digest all the information that Patty and I put out there regarding incident reports, community input forms, and how we handle them, and our role. And we'll meet again on March 2nd. Emily.
Can I just ask, if you send out the material that you were just talking about, can you also send out our last approved incident report? So
It's right on the webpage.
Okay.
It's right linked to our webpage. So if you just click on it, it's right there. But I mean, I can find it and send it out again, but it is right there. One of the things we had requested was an automatic submit button, which hasn't happened yet for an IT request, but I don't want it. We might have to wait on that. I think we have to wait on that. Okay. Anything else?
Maybe I'll just mention, so with the meeting for March 2nd, the agenda is due Thursday, February 25th. So I'll put it on my calendar to remind people on February 18th that the agenda will be due in a week.
Okay.
And can I just I don't know if this was sort of said or not, but can we make sure that if there's anything in writing that anybody wants to submit for the committee to review, that it has to be, it has to come in, at least 48 hours before the meeting so that people will have a chance to review it. For me, Mondays are like a crazy, like a 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. day, and I don't have time to read things on Mondays. So if I can get it at least Sunday night, I can review it.
Thank you all for looking at minutes too. That was totally last minute, but better. We just had 2 meetings in a row and it was hard, but thank you for your efforts. Appreciate it.
And we can always wait. Like if you're in a situation like that, Rebecca, where you can't get to it till today, yesterday, whatever, we could wait another week before we approve or until the next meeting. That's entirely possible. I mean, it's always better, the more timely we can be, the better, but that's definitely an option. Okay. All right. Well, I thank you all very much. Thank you for your comments, your input, everything. And we'll meet again on Tuesday, March 2nd. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we'll take Jan Norman for a second.
Flip a coin. Okay.
All those in favor? Rebecca?
In favor, yes.
Passa. Patty Dougherty.
Yes.
Emily Britton.
Yes, yeah.
Margaret Kirstein.
Yes.
Jan Norman.
Yes.
Myra Oyedemi.
Yes.
Gabby Stevenson.
Yes.
Deborah Lusnia. Yes. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Take
you.
care.